Welcome to this video that hopefully will help students in preparing for the first test, test number 1 in the Math 140 class. You'll notice on this opening slide that the makeup test, if a student is unable to make it to the administration of the test, that the makeup test has to be done outside of class hours, and it will typically be a little more difficult because of the fact that theoretically the person who is absent on test day will be able to have more opportunity to study than the person who takes it on time. So that's to be fair to the rest of the students. And it's done during non-class hours so that the student doesn't miss additional time in the form of lectures and homework assignments and such. The actual content of the test itself is in two parts. I've given students the opportunity to practice on Blackboard in case an individual person has never taken a test on Blackboard, and I wanted the people to understand how Blackboard does the grading and maybe to get a little bit of the unnerving from individuals who may be a little scared of taking tests on computers. The first part will be done on Blackboard, more of a short answer, true, false, multiple choice type format. The second part will be the traditional pencil and paper method where I actually would like to see your work. We will not actually be using MyMathLab for the testing itself, although you need to be accountable for the problem knowledge that was done there. But as far as actually taking the test on MyMathLab, no way. And that's because of all the problems that people have had in recent weeks with the MyMathLab software and with accounts and such. You are permitted to use calculators, and you can also use the website calculator that I have also shown you. No other resources, including laptops, cell phones, smartphones, anything electronic like that, no notes, no books, should be used. Only the material that I provided for you ahead of time. I'm very much a proponent of honesty and integrity when tests are being done, so the academic policy will be enforced. The test is 3 hours, and I should rephrase that. There's a 3-hour time limit. By no means should a student take anywhere near a 3-hour time span to finish the test, but I wanted to give students who may be a little anxious about math and about testing and about computers the comfort of knowing that there's plenty of time to take the test. We'll actually start it during the second half of class after the first break, which will be roughly around 6:30 p.m., and that way you'll have roughly 3 hours, which is 9:30. That's the time that I finish work as far as my contract with the class, and that's about the time that the security people on campus get a little anxious and want to lock everything up. Once you have done the first part, and everybody does start the Blackboard part first, there's no choice there. Everyone starts on the computer part first on Blackboard. Once you finish with that part, you move to the next part of the test, and you have a maximum of 1.5 hours to finish the Blackboard part. You don't have to wait on other people to finish. When you finish Blackboard individually, you can go to the written part, and if you have extra time left over, which all of you should have extra time left over, you can take as long as you want to on the written part. The reason for doing Blackboard first and not going back once you finished it, Blackboard won't let you once you click the submit button. Secondly, I want to make sure that there isn't that rare situation where the computer has a fluke or a mishap and a student becomes penalized for it. So I want to be able to excuse me, check that out for you. And then you can continue with the rest of the written part on your own. The one thing that may be unusual for some of you is that I do not answer any questions of any kind during the test unless it's something about your computer hardware. Maybe the computer is locked down, maybe your calculator, batteries have malfunctioned, something like that is fine. But as far as the content of the test, interpreting questions, asking is this right, is this okay, I absolutely answer nothing about that. That's what the review and questions during class and after school are all about. The test will cover chapters 2, 3, and 4 from the textbook along with any lecture notes or sheets or MyMathLab that is associated with it. Be sure that you don't exclusively look at the book work because you've had problems from MyMathLab. You've had the metric system slideshow where I showed you practical ways of understanding how the metric system works. You've had the blue sheet that had additional questions from chapter 4 about the federal government, Social Security, credit card exercises, etc. And you should know those. It does not cover anything from chapters 5 and 6 that we've gone over in class about statistics. The reason you see chapter 7 on there as a does not cover bullet is because of the way I did this in past semesters with other math classes. But none of this is covered. Only chapters 2, 3, and 4 and the associated work. You were provided all of the formulas that you need, such as the interest formulas, such as the mortgage loan formulas, anything like that, you will be provided. You can use the Internet Calculator, and that is the only website outside of Blackboard that you can use online. You cannot go to other sites. That would be considered dishonest. I will also give you conversions for metric systems. So if you had a problem involving changing kilometers to miles or changing liters to quarts, I will give you those conversion numbers so that you'll have them. It's up to you to decide whether to add, subtract, multiply, divide, or whatever you do. But as far as the mechanical stuff, that's fine, because many of you may have calculators that have these functions already built in, and that's to be fair to everyone in the classroom whose calculators might not be as sophisticated. People get real anxious if they don't do well on the test, and they think they're going to do poorly for the semester. You don't need to run and drop the course in case you're one of those nervous people. The test only counts as 30% of your grade, and this is only one test out of 3 for the summer. Remember that you have your homework, your attendance in class, your online work on I've got Math Excel, but it should say My Math Lab, your semester project, which I'll talk about later on, which you will have no trouble with. So the test really counts only about maybe 15% of your semester average, so it's a very tiny component. Generally, what you need to know is my famous definition of mathematics, and you've heard me say it many, many times. Mathematics is a system of, you fill in the blank, and that's one of the Blackboard questions. You need to know the everyday metrics information that I gave you on a slideshow. I mentioned it in class as well, and such things as, can you use the mason jar to tell me the difference between a quart and a liter? Can you use the door handle to tell me the difference between a meter and a yard? Can you tell me what a centimeter or millimeter is equated to as far as like the paper clip, the dollar bill, the book, in terms of how many kilograms something weighs? You've seen all that on slideshows, and just make sure you review that. You want to know the contents of the worksheets, the blue ones that I gave you from Chapter 4, and I'll go over these in more detail in just a second. And you want to know the uses of percentages, which I'll also go over in just a minute. So that's general knowledge. Again, the 2 parts of the test are like this. The first part on Blackboard is 50 points possible. So when you see a 50 or a 45 or something on your Blackboard, don't panic and think that's out of a 1 to 100 scale. No, you have not failed. That's 50 points for this first part, 50 points for the second part. The first part, roughly 30 questions, which sounds like a lot, but they're very short answer oriented. For example, you might have one dealing with area, which is a very simple calculation. You might have one asking you to convert someone's weight from pounds to kilograms, or a multiple choice test that says a milligram is about equal to a grain of salt, true or false, something like that. They're short answer, true, false, multiple choice, small computation things where the answer is the only thing I'm really concerned about. In the second part, which is also 50 possible points, there are a total of 10 word problems involved with the topics that you see on this slide. You may be asked to, if you're given a cost of food plus tax and a percentage for tip, you may be asked how much the tip will be. You may be given the entire bill and break it up into how much is tip and how much is food plus tax. You may be given a problem about the cost of gasoline and so many miles per gallon for your car, and driving a certain distance, what would be the total cost for your trip. You may have something involving sales tax and discount where you have a shirt or a pair of trousers or a dress or something where you have a discount and then a sales tax, and what would your total cost of the item be. You'll have the typical calculations dealing with simple and compound interest, daily, monthly, quarterly, whatever. Savings accounts, how much would be in savings if you deposit so much a month for so many years. Loan payments for cars and houses, stuff you've done in Chapter 4 a lot. Absolute and relative change exercises. Be sure when you do relative change that the answer is in percent form. Be sure if there's a negative necessary that you account for that. And the finance charge average daily balance exercise with the credit cards, which was on the back of the Chapter 4 blue sheets. Chapter 2 specifically, if you look at Section 2A in the book, and pause this video as you need to look at this material. If you look at the quick quiz questions, number 1, the definition of the word per versus in percents, the word of or the words more than. You need to understand what these words mean because they're used daily and in these particular problems as well as practical problems in life. The difference between area and volume and the units, whether it's square feet or cubic feet or square inches or cubic inches, something like that. Problem 37 and problem 43 are very good examples of area and volume calculations. And again, be careful about the units here. In Section 2B, I have to rely on you folks
A few of you have had difficulties copying and doing the correct homework questions. I've got to rely on you and your reading ability to know the difference between quick quiz, does it make sense, basic skills, review questions. You've got to be able to read these headings, folks. You're in a college class, and we don't need to go backward in terms of dumbing it down for people not reading directions. That's something where you have to take responsibility. Please look over number 3, number 5, number 6, again, dealing with the metric units. Remember the little poem that we had about 30 is hot, 20 is nice, as far as knowing the difference between Celsius and Fahrenheit temperatures. Look at your lecture notes and the slides with the metrics. Can you look at those visuals and recognize when you look at a dollar bill, a grain of salt, a book, the mason jar, quart jar, the door and door handle? Can you understand how to relate these to metric units? Can you take someone's weight in pounds and convert it to kilograms? Can you take someone's height in inches and convert it to centimeters mathematically? Just real small calculations. There is nothing on Section 2C at all. Please don't waste your time studying it. So you don't have to worry about anything about cars and trucks and about the woman taking the wolf and the goat across the river. None of that stuff is on there. Moving on to Chapter 3, you need to know the 3 ways of using percentages. This was an exercise in the assignments on Section 3A. The answer to this is not fraction, decimal, percent. That's 3 ways to express a number. But I'm talking about the usage of percentages, such as for comparison. And you can look at these in the blue headings of your book, as well as one of your review question exercises that you had. I think it was review question number 1 in Section 3A. You need to understand the concepts where absolute and relative change are concerned. You need to understand such things as when something is increased by 100%, it's doubled. When it's 200%, it's tripled. That's like number 1 on the quick quiz. Look at the problems that I mentioned there, number 51, which involves the topic of comparing salaries in absolute and relative terms. Look at number 77, when you have a bicycle with a price and a sales tax. This sounds basic and elementary, but a lot of people forget that in light of all the calculus and X, Y, and coordinate systems. Sometimes in the abstract, we forget to look at the practical. Number 81 has a good example about tips, and you already know how to do discount problems. If you have a clothing item with a certain discount, what's the final price? You should be able to do those calculations. And of course, you can use the calculator for actually punching in the numbers. Look at scientific notation. This was mentioned in Chapter 3B, those problems, and they were also given to you in the My Math Lab. Can you take a number like 340,000 or decimal 00045 and convert it to scientific notation with the 10 to the raised to the power? Can you take the national debt, a number like $14.3 trillion, and write that as a regular number with lots of zeros? Can you write it in scientific notation? In Chapter 4, there is no exercise on the test associated with the Section 4A. That's the one where you had to deal with the budgets for the household monthly. There were a lot of confusion issues with that, and with I'm trying to think, the medical bill where you had the co-payments and deductibles and stuff. That became a little more complex than I wanted it to be, so I didn't want to bring that to the table where a test was concerned. So don't worry about Section 4A for the test. 4B, however, involves simple and compound interest, which deals with money, and we're all going to have to deal with that at some point. On page 224, number 1, there's an exercise that asks you what the difference is between simple and compound interest, and hopefully you already know that answer, which one pays the most money. Section 4B also has some exercises oriented towards simple interest, and again, the formulas will be given to you, such as number 43 and 46, where you're given the money deposited and the yearly interest rate. What would the simple interest rate amount in dollars be, and what would the total amount of money in the bank be? Look at compound interest, and that should probably say numbers 55 to 62 rather than 65 there. That's kind of an error. You want to find the compound interest when they're doing this daily or quarterly or monthly or something. Be sure you understand those. While I will give you the formulas, you have to do the process of thinking about the numbers that you have to actually plug in. You need to know examples of savings plans. On page 227, the opening paragraph of that section gives you examples of savings plans such as the individual retirement account, IRA or Roth, or employee pension plans or something like that. And I give you two examples to focus on in section 4C, number 27 and number 29, which basically give you situations where you set up an account at a certain age in your life and you deposit for so many years, what would be the amount of money in the account. Section 4D is where we deal with loans, and we're looking at the amortized loans. Section 4D asks you to give examples of a loan payment. On page 248, the first paragraph talks about such things as credit cards and house payments and car loans. That's basically what the examples are about. And if you look at number 15 and number 21 in section 4D, those are good focused examples. Now, these are not exact examples that will be on your test, but they'll be very close to them. So if you have a student's loan or home mortgage with a certain amount, a certain interest rate, and a certain number of years repayment, what would be the payments? What would be the monthly payment? What would be the total of all the payments over all the years? And how much of that was done with interest? Look at your blue sheets also to get information about the credit card finances, the finance charge, and the average daily balance. In section 4F, which is from the book, the work was actually done on the blue worksheets that you should have in your hands now. Focus on these particular questions I've listed, numbers 4, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. And when you're dealing with list questions, I'll only give questions with what I call portions of a list. For example, and you see the example up there, I'll give you a different example from what's on your screen right now. If I were to say to you, true or false, according to the textbook, around the year 2020, the number of retirees receiving Social Security payments would be more than the receipts or monies that the government collects. You would say true or false, and that would be knowing the date there. Again, if you know the contents of these study questions, you should be fine. I could give something like, the economists blame the federal debt on 4 factors, which you listed on the blue sheets, and I'll say name 2 of those 4 factors. So instead of having all 4, you only have to list 2 of them, so you don't have to look at everything. The example on this slide says that the government gets its monies from 5 different categories of accounts. Name any 3 of them. And I always use the phrase according to the textbook so people don't start making up answers and start protesting if they disagree with it. And of course, a reminder again, look at the credit card exercise on the last page of the blue sheets. If you have not done these sheets, you need to find some means of getting these answers, or this may very much hurt you academically, numerically on the test if you don't have these done and don't know the answers. I will provide a calculator problem for you. What I mean by that is I'll give you an example. This one is incomplete because of the width of the slide in PowerPoint, but I will give you an example of a problem with the calculation information like 100 times parentheses, you get the idea. I'll give you the answer to it so you can make sure your calculator is working correctly, and I'll try to work with you also so that you can make sure you have a practice problem going on there. Now, you cannot do this in the middle of the test. You've got to have this set up right off the bat before you start the test, because again, I will not answer your questions during the test. If you mess up, unfortunately, I can't help you out. The important part, as I said, though, I'm not interested in the answers only. I'm interested in that you have the thought process down pat. So if you have your problem set up and you just have a calculator error, you will not lose most of the points. You'll have most of the points given to you for setting it up correctly, because the logical thinking is what it's all about. When you're doing a test, and many of you are still not doing this on your homework, and it's going to cost you on a test, ladies and gentlemen, be sure that you show units. If the answer is 48, and it's miles per gallon, I want to see miles per gallon. I do not want to see 48 as a number standing alone. I wouldn't know if that was money or inches or miles per gallon or what. And I want to make sure that you're understanding the problem. It's not a matter of pickiness. It's a matter of your understanding completely what the word problem is about. Please do not write just the answer, even if you use a calculator. Show me the setup so that I have a means of giving you partial credit just in case your answer may be incorrect because of carelessness. I probably will not give you full credit for just writing the answer, and you need to know that up front, both here in writing, and it is also stated on the test itself. So that's your responsibility as a student. People ask me if the test is hard, and I can't answer that question because that depends on the student. Some say it's hard and it's because they didn't study, or because they're scared, or because they're not good at math, and I can't answer that. That's in your hands. I will say the test is fair. I will say the test is thorough. Basically, what people always tell me, and I believe it's true, if I tell you it's on the test, it's there. If I tell you it's not on the test, then it's not
on the test. And hopefully this will give you some good information. And this happens to be my last slide. And I hope this will help you
prepare for test one. Of course, if you need additional information, you can talk to your fellow students and you can communicate
with me in many ways through Blackboard messages, through email, through telephone, and of course in class. I wish you the best of luck on your very first test in Math 140.